10 years ago, Richard A. Mueller was skeptical about climate change. Or, as he says, he was agnostic about the whole issue.
If you had asked me back then, what is your feeling about global warming, my answer would have been, well, I don't know.
Mueller is a retired UC Berkeley physics professor. He remembers having lunch with the department when a Nobel laureate walked in.
And as he walked in, he said, so, I've just been reading about global warming. Certainly everybody here believes in global warming, right? And everybody nodded their head except me, and I shook my head.
Mueller says he was suspicious the research at the time might be biased. So, at his daughter's suggestion, he put together a group of scientists to study the data. After intensive research, the team found the average temperature of the Earth had risen by 2.5 degrees over the past 250 years.
And our conclusion was global warming was real and it's caused by carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. That's a very strong, definite conclusion that I can defend in front of anybody, in front of any scientist, in front of the general public, because we did the work ourselves.
Now Mueller says he's in a unique position to convince others. He knows how to listen to skeptics and emphasize. But not everyone can put together a team of researchers at an elite institution to address their own lingering doubts.
If you want to call me a denialist at the time, that was exactly it.
Reverend Richard Cizik, president of the New Evangelical Partnership for the Common Good, just needed to hear the science. He says back in 2002, he thought climate change was a myth.
I was a victim of what was the emissions of human greed, ignorance, and hatred. In other words, I would confess that even I had a degree of greed, a degree of ignorance, and yes, anger in part toward environmentalists and others who said my lifestyle was wrong.
Then Cizik says he experienced a conversion to science. A friend invited him to a climate conference. For 4 days, he learned about rising sea levels, deforestation, and pollution. Climate change was presented as a spiritual issue, and he felt a deep sense of repentance.
We don't have an option here. God says, I will destroy those who destroy the earth. And then the question is, who is that's doing this? And we have to say all of us.
He says it really was that easy. After that, he changed his lifestyle and began educating other evangelicals about climate change. But he was ostracized and ultimately lost his job. It wasn't until 2015 that the National Association of Evangelicals adopted a statement that recognized climate change as a threat.
Those of us that are advocates for creation care, we see people changing their minds, especially among the younger evangelicals, the millennials. They know what's at stake. It's their future.
In fact, research shows that kids can be some of the most likely to convince skeptics. Danielle Lawson is a researcher at North Carolina State University. She recently tested this theory with a curriculum for middle school students. They were taught about the impact of climate change on animals. Lawson says these kids then inspired their parents to care more about the well-being of the planet.
There's a level of trust. If their child is talking to them about climate change, they may be less likely to see their child as an ideological threat.
She says concern about climate change jumped for conservative parents in particular, especially after their daughters talked to them about it.
Stop denying the earth is dying. Stop.
You say you love your children above all else, and yet you are stealing their future in front of their very eyes.
And Lawson says around the world, the young people leading climate strikes are keeping these conversations going.
They're not going to let us forget about it. It's having an impact in the sense that they're talking to politicians and to adults, but it's also influencing what's happening in a home.
So how do you convince a skeptic? Show them the facts. See if they're willing to talk to a reformed physicist or a converted evangelical, or see if a knowledgeable middle schooler is around to talk. For Philosophy Talk, I'm Holly J. McDede.